Hello everyone. I'm Stella. I was born and reared in Carmel by the Sea, a little coastal town in California. My family was not well off, barely making ends meet, so I didn't have the option to attend college like many of my friends. After graduating from high school, I began working as a sales clerk in a supermarket to support my family. Life was tough, but I didn't have many alternatives. I understood that it was my obligation to contribute to the household income. I met and married my husband in early 2020, when I was 25 years old. He was 3 years my senior and worked as an auto mechanic at a small shop in town. He was a calm, quiet man who appeared trustworthy, so I believed I could construct a secure life with him. My husband is a Chinese American. My mother-in-law is American, but my father-in-law is my husband's family, which is unique in that it combines two distinct cultures. My mother-in-law, a typical American woman, is quite open and friendly, always trying to preserve traditional American family values. She has a modern lifestyle and frequently participates in community activities, including yoga sessions and other social events. She is gentle and polite and always shows concern for me, at least on the surface. My father-in-law, on the other hand, carries the traditions and conservative thinking of an older generation Chinese man. He is about 52 years old, a man who appears calm on the outside but is unpredictable on the inside. He worked in construction when he first came to the United States and later became a small manager in a machine shop. Although he is retired, he still acts as the spiritual leader of the family after we got married. Although our life was not rich or luxurious, I used to feel happy because we lived a simple life, working together and sharing the small joys of everyday life. I believed that as long as we were together, everything would be fine, but what I didn't expect was that the mental and physical deficiencies gradually eroded our initial happiness. To be honest, my husband, although he looks big and strong, is very weak in sex. This has become a big problem, but I don't know how to deal with it. He frequently has premature ejaculation, and every time it happens, I can't hide the disappointment that rises in my heart. I tried not to let it affect our relationship. My husband is the eldest son and the only son in his family. Aside from him, the family has a younger sister, but she is still in college, and her future of getting married and having children is still far away. So all the expectations and responsibility of having children to continue the family line fall on us, and that became a burden I couldn't escape. I felt a lot of pressure, not just from my husband's family but also from myself. I know my spouse felt the strain as well, but he never said anything. He simply attempted to escape it by keeping silent and working harder. Every day, I had to deal with my mother-in-law's quiet queries. My father-in-law's scrutinizing gaze made me realize that my husband's family expected, if not demanded, more from me, but I had no idea how to fix the situation when my spouse refused to face it. We gradually grew apart, and the marriage began to crumble as a result of those minor matters, which we never stated aloud but affected everything. My husband's parents gathered us together one evening, sitting seriously as if ready for an important chat. I could sense the tension in the air before they talked, when my mother-in-law softly recommended that we visit the doctor to see if there was anything amiss. I wasn't startled. In fact, I'd been anticipating this talk for a long time. I recognized that our childlessness had become a major issue for them, and no matter how gentle she was, I felt a weight hanging over my head. I sat there silently, staring at my hands, while my mother-in-law said that she only wanted to make sure everything was well and that no one was in any severe trouble. I realized what she meant. She didn't say it explicitly, but I felt she was hinting at my fertility. At the time, I had a peculiar sensation of humiliation, as if everything was my fault, but my spouse had a different reaction. He sat up straight, his face stiff, and rejected right away, claiming we didn't need to run any tests. His tone was a touch harsh, and I knew he was defending his ego. He refused to accept that he could have a problem. Every time I brought it up, he would ignore it or dismiss it as if it wasn't important, but the fact was that it had cast a large shadow over our lives. The in-laws glanced at him, and the mood in the room became increasingly oppressive. Nobody said anything else, but the stillness was heavy, filled with unspoken disappointment. I felt like I was caught between two worlds. On the one hand, it was a wife's job to give birth to a child in order to perpetuate the family line. On the other, my husband refused to accept reality, leaving me at a loss for what to do. The atmosphere in the home grew thicker over time. Every meal became stressful, and every time I visited my in-laws, I felt an unseen pressure bearing down on me. Their worries about my health and words of encouragement were no longer concerns but rather blades stabbing deep into my anxiety. Not having children had become a secret wound. With each passing day made it one evening in September 2021, a day that I still remember vividly because what happened next completely changed my life. My husband had a party at work, so he came home late. My mother-in-law had a yoga class with her friends as usual, so it was just me, and my husband had a party at work, so he came home late. My mother-in-law had a yoga class with her friends as usual, so it was just me and my father-in-law at home. I never thought that he could be a danger to me at that time. I just considered him a family member. Even though my relationship with him was never very close. After a long day of work, I took a shower and changed into a short dress simply because I wanted to be comfortable at home. I went to the kitchen and prepared dinner for both of us. I didn't think much of it. It was just a normal meal between two family members. I remember clearly when I walked into the living room. My father-in-law was sitting on the chair, his eyes looking at me a little strangely, but I didn't pay much attention at that time. I called him in for dinner. As usual, he stood up and slowly walked into the kitchen. Everything seemed normal at first, but there was an uneasy feeling that I couldn't explain. After the meal, I was standing, washing the dishes. The kitchen was quiet except for the sound of running water, and I was focused on my work, not realizing that something was about to happen. Suddenly, I felt a pair of arms wrap around my waist and hug me tightly from behind. I was startled, turned around in panic, and saw that the man was none other than my father-in-law. At that moment, I didn't know how to react. My mind was in turmoil, unable to believe that this was actually happening. I wanted to scream to push him away, but my mouth was covered by him. I couldn't escape, and all my pleas seemed to go unspoken. He held me tight, and while I was still in shock, he whispered in my ear that he would help me get pregnant. At that moment, a shiver ran down my spine. His words made me feel disgusted, but I was helpless, unable to do anything. Before I could react, he acted. Everything happened quickly, violently, and I had no time to resist. The feeling at that moment was terrifying. A numbness covered my whole body, and I could only stand there letting everything happen without being able to do anything. When it was over, I collapsed, holding my head and sobbing, the feelings of shame, disgust, and fear together almost suffocating me. But my father-in-law, with a cold and calm expression, only said that he did this for the happiness of the family. He stood up, walked away as if nothing had happened, leaving me in chaos and despair. That night, I didn't dare tell my husband. I didn't know how to face this. I was afraid that if I spoke out, things would go too far and our marriage would be beyond saving. I chose to remain silent, trying to suppress the pain and fear inside me. Pretending that nothing had happened. After the first time, things were no longer the same. I tried to live my normal life, keeping things going as if nothing was unusual, but every time I faced my father-in-law, I couldn't dispel the feeling of shivering in fear. The way he looked at me had changed. It was no longer the indifferent, calm look like before. Every time I met that look, I could feel something different. A possessiveness, a desire that I had never seen before. That look confused me, panicked me, but also drew me into a spiral of guilt and torment that I couldn't escape. Another evening, not long after that first time, my husband worked overtime at work and my mother-in-law went to yoga as usual. I stayed home feeling uneasy. The fear of facing my faith. Our in-law always haunted me whenever we were alone at home. That evening, when he walked into the house, I knew the worst was about to happen again. There was no more avoiding eyes or restraint like before. This time he walked straight towards me, and before I could realize what was happening, he pulled me into the room. Everything happened so fast I had no time to react or resist. The door closed behind us, and in the small space I could feel his heavy breathing right next to my ear. This time he was much more forceful. My feeble resistance only made him more determined. I tried to push him away, but that only brought him closer, forcing me to accept the fact that I could not escape this situation. Even at that terrifying time, his skill astounded me. My father-in-law, even at 52, had a strength and ability in bed that I had never seen in my husband. Despite his tall appearance, my husband was always weak and hasty in intimacy, which gradually made me feel disappointed and distant. But my father-in-law, on the contrary, knew exactly what he had to do. Every action and every gesture was full of control and power. I didn't want to admit it, but deep down I felt something I had never felt with my husband. Pleasure mixed with guilt and fear. I sat down, my heart heavy, but he acted as if nothing had happened, as if it were a given a part of life that I had to accept after that. My father-in-law and I became even more secretive whenever my husband was away from home or my mother-in-law was busy. It became an opportunity for him to approach me. Every time I saw him, I could feel the tension in the air, but there was also something that pulled me towards him despite all my reason and resistance. It was a complex feeling, a mixture of hatred and repressed desire that I could not resist, could not break away from this sinful relationship. We both knew that what we were doing was wrong, but neither of us seemed to be able to stop. I found myself sinking deeper into this relationship, trapped between guilt and emotions that I could not control. About a year later, I gave birth to a baby boy, the child that my husband's family had long awaited as a release from the pressure that had lasted all this time. For everyone it was happiness, a sign that the family was complete, but for me it was an obsession, the result of a terrible secret that I had to bear alone. I looked at my son, both loving and painful, wondering if he knew anything about the circumstances of his birth. The moments I held him in my arms, I clearly felt the heaviness in my heart. After the birth of our child, my husband and I moved out. Having a child gave my husband some joy and peace of mind, but I knew that there was an invisible wall between us. The closeness we once had was completely gone. Every time I looked into my husband's eyes, I felt like I was hiding something unforgivable. My conscience was always tormenting me, a feeling of guilt that clung to me every day. I couldn't tell him the truth. I knew that if I confessed, everything would fall apart. Our life, our family, our children, everything would collapse. I didn't have the courage to face that consequence. Instead, I chose to keep everything to myself, to keep the pain inside, and to live in a stifling silence. Every day I had to pretend that everything was fine and that I didn't have a terrible secret, but deep down I always felt the rift between us. Even though he didn't know it, I still feel guilty towards my husband. I feel like I've betrayed him, not only physically but also mentally, but I don't know how to get out of this spiral. Everything appears so delicate, like if just one confession from me will break everything. Yet I can't bear this guilt forever. Should I confess to my husband? Should I tell him the truth about what occurred, about my hidden connection with my father-in-law, and the true reason I feel bad every day? But what if I tell him? Will he forgive me? Our lives would probably never be the same, and I would most likely lose everything. Or should I remain silent and bury this secret forever? I can put up with this agony if it means saving my family and my child from harm. But the quiet is eating me up, leaving me unable to escape the misery and guilt. I don't know what to do. How would you react if you were in my situation? Should I confess to be free or remain silent to protect my family? I need support and advice from folks who understand how I feel.